not over the top or anything like that. But look, McConaughey is a terrific actor, but he's a very good-looking guy as far as a Hollywood movie goes. And what happens is if you're a good-looking guy and you're an actor in Hollywood, they really don't want you to act. They just want you to show up. Just show up, take off your shirt, and make convincing love to the leading lady. And you make millions of dollars doing that. And he did that for many years, and I don't blame him. Because if I looked like that, I would do the same thing. But he really is an actor, and he's now decided to take control of his career and do roles that challenge him. But in this case, he grew up with people like the Smith family, and he grew up in a trailer at the Texas-Oklahoma border, and so he knew these characters. And when I met him and talked to him, I knew that I wouldn't have to explain this to him. He understood it. But I must say that I read recently an interview he gave, and he said when he first read the script, he thought it was vile, and he damn near threw up. And then he started to think about it, and he said it stayed with him, and it made a profound impression on him, and he read it again, and he saw the humor in it. He saw that it was not only funny, it was absurd. And so he then asked to meet with me, and I met with him, and I thought, this guy's going to be perfect, and I won't really have to direct him. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. That's what we try to do as directors. We don't want to really direct. We want to have these guys be on the nose, you know what I mean? I like to cast exactly who they are. Not have somebody put on makeup or have to assume a personality that isn't theirs. I mean, about 75% of what a director does is you select the material that you feel comfortable with, and then you cast it. And the casting and the material are the most important things. And then all of the rest of it really amounts to setting a mood where the actors and the technicians can feel comfortable about what they're doing and feel free to create and not feel that you're going to be judgmental about what they're doing. And if they are on the nose, it makes it go a lot easier and a lot faster.
Has that got easier to work in that way, William? Because we think of the early 1970s when you and your contemporaries permanently changed Hollywood, even it changed back again. Well, let's call it the early 80s, shall we?
Call it the 90s.
Yeah. I was wondering what the contrast is. We think of that as a period when you guys had a lot of freedom, or ensure that you got a lot of freedom. Is it difficult, more difficult now? Do you find people lurking over your shoulder, worrying more about budgets and making sure films are more obviously mainstream?
We always had to worry about budgets. I mean, the budget of The French Connection was $1.5 million, which by film standards, as you know, many of them cost $200 million easily today or more. The budget of The French Connection was $1.5 million. And every day that it looked like I was going to go over budget, the studio wanted to fire me. And it was just the producer that saved me from getting fired for, maybe going a few thousand over. The people who ran the studios then, they really knew about budgets, and they didn't let us get out of control. We were young guys, it's true, and filmmaking really is a young person's game. There's no question about that. It takes a lot of energy, but none of us were allowed really to run wild. That's a myth. Coppola was getting fired off The Godfather all the time. I remember getting a phone call while I was doing a film called The Brinks Job from the producer of the film Raging Bull. Have any of you seen that? Okay, if you haven't, get the hell out of here. I got a phone call from the producer saying, would I be interested in replacing Martin Scorsese because he was going over budget, they didn't understand the film he was getting, and this and that. And I said, well, let me think about it. And I never called them. No, but we were all getting fired and being challenged all the time by people who knew what they were doing and how to control budgets, and it was a different era in that sense. But we had no more freedom than the young filmmakers have today.
You don't think so? No, because they often say that it's fine if you're shooting a $200 million film or shooting a $1 million film, but try and shoot a $4 million film and you're in trouble.
Well, yeah, look, money is dear. Everyone knows that. And you've got guys making independent films who are more concerned about budgets because it's harder to come back. You know, that Batman movie, that opening here, that's a guaranteed blockbuster. It could cost anything and it'll make money. You know, there are just certain films that the audience will see, and what Hollywood is like today is sort of a large casino, you know, where they take all the money and put it on one chip, you know. And that's a difference from when I started 2 or 3 years ago. In that the studios made many more films of different budgets, but never like the kind of budgets you have today. It's an interesting thing, Donald, that now you have the tools to fulfill anyone's vision, to fulfill a director's vision. Anything you can think of can be done on a computer today, computer-generated imagery. But it doesn't cost less money to do it. It costs more money. All the stuff we did in the early films that I made, we had to do that stuff. We couldn't draw it on a computer. A car chase or something like that, we had to do that, and it was very life-threatening. You know, and it's not the kind of stuff I would do again today, to be honest with you. But now, they do it very convincingly on a computer.
I'd like to raise our hand with a question. Yes, gentleman in the purplish jumper, yes.
Yes, sir.
First of all, Mr. Friedkin, I don't want you to come to Dublin and leave without getting the gratitude of movie fanatics like myself for the wonderful experiences you gave us in the past.
Thank you.
The Exorcist, for French Connection, for Jade, for the better and the lesser known films.
Thank you so much.
I slightly disagree with what you said about it's all over when you've done the casting and one or two other preliminary chores. There will always, for me, be a Friedkin movie. And you may not even know what you're bringing to the mise-en-scène, to the framing, to the acting. You're probably bringing a lot more than you acknowledge, or maybe even a lot more than you know. And that's very evident in every frame of this picture. I've nothing else to say, really. I'm just delighted to see you back on.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. By the way, I'd like to introduce you to my father. Thanks, Dad. Guys, you're a good old sport.
One of my favorites of your movies is one of your lesser-known movies, The Deal of the Century.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Chevy Chase. I always have been. He's worked with my 3 favorite directors, yourself, John Landis, and John Carpenter. And I was just wondering, since you don't talk about Deal of the Century, I'd just like to hear you say something about it. I don't know whether...
No, I like it.
I like it myself, yeah.
I love the film. I think it's damn funny. You know, I think, you know, it's a comedy about the arms industry.
Yeah.
And it, you know, really at bottom, it's as dark as anything else I made. But it's not a black comedy. And it was very hard for people to make that leap from thinking about the people who sell tanks and guns and bombs and then turn it into a comedy with Chevy Chase. But I love that film. I've seen it not long ago, and I thought it was wonderful. It was written by a young man named Paul Brickman.
Risky Business, yeah.
Risky Business, he wrote. And Gregory Hines was in it, who was a really good friend.
And Vince Edwards.
Vince Edwards, yeah. Who is an old poker buddy of mine.
Oh, right, okay.
And that's he's gone now.
Yeah.
Not from poker, but he's gone to meet his maker, I'm sorry, his dad.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you actually like it.
I love it. No, I don't talk about it a lot because people don't ask me about it. I really tend to just talk about what I'm asked about. Right. You know, and I thank you for that compliment, Dad. But, you know, I really think of it as a collaborative work. the whole idea of the director as auteur is not something that I support. You know, it takes a lot of people to make a film. And a film is really, perhaps it's the sensibility of only one or two people, like the writer, perhaps the director, often the producer. But there's so many others that contribute to it, that make it work. And it's hard to even rank them. I mean, you'd have to say, I mean, some of my films are better than others because of the cinematography, you know, or the editing, or whatever. And that's the contribution of a lot of people. I'd love to stand up here and say I did this and I did that, and you know, but I was one of the guys, and I was the guy who said roll it and cut, and it was my idea to make the film. So if you don't like it, remember.
Hi, William, how's it going? Thanks everybody for coming to Dublin. I really enjoyed the movie.
Thank you, sir.
Just two very, very quick questions.
Yeah.
First one, I'm 27 years of age, but a movie that I'm sure everyone in this room has seen more than once, The Exorcist. You know, it's obviously indelible in terms of cinema. I wanted to ask you, having supervised so many recuts of the movie or versions you've never seen and all the rest, was there one particular cut or one particular moment in that movie, one little frame in that movie, do you think that's the one, that's the best part of that movie for me? Well, you've seen it so many times, so.
What's your name?
Brian is my name.
Brian?
Brian, yeah.
I don't have a particular favorite scene or actor or anything else. I was asked some time ago, I think possibly in Edinburgh, what I thought was a standout performance in one of my films. And what immediately comes to mind is Ellen Burstyn in The Exorcist. She was just fantastic. And I honestly feel that this group of 5 people here is the best ensemble cast I've ever had. They were wonderful to work with, and I think they're great. I just think they're so good, so excellent. And but this is a recent experience, obviously. But going back, I would say Ellen Burstyn. Now, I only did 2 cuts of The Exorcist. I cut 12 minutes out of my original cut when the film was released at Christmas of 1973. And then in the year 2000, I put those 12 minutes back because the author of the book and the screenplay, over the years, he had really beseeched me to put those 12 minutes back. Most of them underlined the spiritual nature of the film. And originally, I felt that that needed no underlining. I felt it was pretty obvious that the girl had a disease or an illness that could not be explained, and that she was cured by an exorcism, you know. And the film was made by people who believe, like the writer and myself. He is a believing Catholic. I am not, but I strongly believe in the teachings of Jesus. And I made the film with that sensibility. But then in 2000, he called me. He lives in Bethesda, Maryland, and I've been living in Los Angeles. He called me and he said, Billy, would you just look at the film that you cut out and just see if there's a way that you could put any of it back? And because I owed him so much, because he gave me The Exorcist, I thought, what the hell? And I looked at the outtakes with him, and I put the 12 minutes back in, that I largely, at the time, thought was a commercial for the church. And that we didn't need that. The whole film, to me, was a commercial for the church. But I put it back in the year 2000, and they re-released the film in theaters. And then out came the Blu-ray and other stuff. But those are the only cuts I've ever made of the film.
And the second thing, just very quickly, and some people will ask questions.
Right.
You mentioned budgetary control, and today, you know, back then it was the same as it is now. There is an element of studio control. What I wanted to ask you about was content control. You made a movie in 1980 or so. I mean, having come from French Connection, The Exorcist, 2 wildly successful films, making a film called Cruising with Al Pacino in 1980. Now, is that a situation where the project started off with something in your mind, and then it came out as something different because of studio interference, or obviously there's controversy surrounding it? I just wanted to get, I've never heard you speak about it, similarly to the Chevy Chase films, I've never heard you speak about it, so we might get a few.
Going back to Deal of the Century. No,
Not the budget.
no, there was, look, I had a contract then to deliver an R-rated picture, not an X-rated picture. And I purposely shot about 40 minutes of film that would never be rated R. And it was sort of a game with the ratings board. I let them chip away at it, knowing it would never get on the screen, to get an R rating. And I sent the film back about 50 times.
So?
Seriously, 50 times, and to get the R. But all the cuts that were made was stuff I knew was going to get cut. It was actual pornographic footage. And after I got the rating, I quietly slipped some of it back in. Subliminal cuts, I'm sorry to say.
Just want to congratulate you on an excellent film there.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, just in terms of The Exorcist, were you ever offered or wanted to try directing either the sequels or anything that came after that?
I made it very clear at the outset that I would never direct a sequel to The Exorcist, and I've never seen one. I know they exist out there, but I have not seen one of them. I can't really knock them because, well, I know what's in them, you know, from studio gossip and stuff, and from, you know, people who've seen them. I'm going to tell you a little story about Exorcist 2. This is a true story. This is not the fellow playing Hamlet. Exorcist 2, I had a call from the executives at Warner Brothers, and they said to me, "Congratulations, you're a grandfather. This picture is great, and we're going to preview it in a little town called Pasadena, outside of Los Angeles. We're going to preview the picture, and would you like to come?" And I said, "No, I don't think so. I think I'll pass." And then I heard the story of that preview. The executives of Warner Brothers drove up to the studio in big black limousines, almost as black as your shirt. And they drove up there and they told their drivers they would be 2.5 hours. And the drivers could go down the street, and there were a bunch of fast food places down the street, and the drivers could go and get a bite, and they would be inside the theater for 2.5 hours. So they go in and they sit in the last row, and the movie starts, and after about 10 minutes into the film, a man stood up in the middle of the audience, and he said, "The people who made this piece of shit are in this room." and the audience, guys all around the theater said, "Where? Where are they?" And he said, "They're right back there. They're sitting in the last row." And the audience stood up, and these guys ran out. They ran out of the theater after about 15 minutes, and of course their cars were gone. So they ran down the street, and they were chased. And I'm not exaggerating. That story was told to me by 2 of them. And then it became one of the biggest films where people demanded their money back. Now, when I say that, I must tell you that a lot of people demanded their money back for my film Bug. A lot of people, it was advertised as a horror film from the director of The Exorcist. And a lot of people thought it was a horror film. And as a psychological, you know, as a study of paranoia and madness. And people didn't go into the cinema for that. So there was a heavy backlash against Bug. If you didn't like Bug out there, please leave. Yes, sir.
Mr. Friedkin, thank you very much.
Call me Bill.
Bill, thank you. I love your film.
Thank you, sir.
Like Bug, that perhaps was misrepresented, I love another one of your films. I think the same thing sort of happens, Sorcerer, remake Wages of Fear. Why was it called Sorcerer and not The Wages of Fear?
Well, first of all, I didn't think of it as a remake at all.
Okay.
For example, if somebody is directing, let's say, a film, or they're even doing on stage Hamlet, let's say, it's not a remake, it's another version. I mean, John Gielgud's version is different from Laurence Olivier's. You know, if someone is doing a play by Synge or O'Casey or whoever it might be, Arthur Miller, Bernard Shaw, it's not a remake of that. It's not a remake of Heartbreak House or something. It's a new version. And that's what I did with the film I called Sorcerer. Now, over the years, I have concocted a fictitious story about why I called the film Sorcerer.
Great, that's what I want to hear.
Well, no, the fictitious story I've abandoned in the interest of the full truth. The gras, as it were. And I was listening to an album by Miles Davis called Sorcerer. And I thought that was a damn good title. And when I was in South America, when I was in Ecuador, looking at the scenery, and I saw these cargo trucks that they had in South America, they were all painted very interestingly, and they all had names. The truck drivers gave names to their trucks, some of them, and they were written on the trucks. Some were in their wives' names, or their sons or daughters or friends. And I remember seeing a truck that was called Sorcier, which was French for sorcerer, and the other truck was called Lazaro, which was representative of Lazarus. And having had the names of those two trucks, and then I'm listening to this wonderful album by Miles Davis called Sorcerer, I just made up my mind to call it that. My original title for the film, which the head of the studio wanted to brain me when I suggested it to him, was Ball Breaker. That I think is the perfect title for that film. And that's what it was. And, you know, in today's world, I might get away with that, you know, but I couldn't at the time. So, being desperate, I stole the title from a Miles Davis album.
How are you, Bill? I just think you're a legend, and I think you're one of the best filmmakers out there. And
thanks, Uncle Sid.
one of the films of yours I really love, and I only really watched it a couple of weeks ago. You were saying earlier about car chases, and I've nearly yet to see it to be topped, is your excellent crime film To Live and Die in LA.
Oh, thank you.
And I read, I don't know whether it's true or not, I just wondered, did you know that I read you were investigated first by the FBI because they wanted to check your counterfeiting techniques. And I've also read that they seeing where Willem Dafoe is making the money, they actually show that now in law enforcement. I don't know where that's true, it was just something I read, but I wonder, did you know anything about that, or could you shed any light on that at all?
The fact, or the idea that I was investigated by the FBI is absolutely false. I was investigated by the Secret Service. Because they are the ones who... The Secret Service is a branch of the United States Treasury, and they're the ones who control counterfeiting. And I had a Secret Service man who had been in the service for 20 years, and I found that the work of a Secret Service man was really surrealistic. One day, he might be protecting the President of the United States or a visiting dignitary from somewhere else and be in the same room with them. And often, this particular fellow used to play cards with President Reagan and along with the other agents and some cronies of President Reagan. And then the next day, after the president left the city, they'd be out chasing a guy down in a very bad area for a forged credit card with $50 or phony $20 bills and stuff. And so I thought, this is a really surrealist line of work. And that's what led me to make To Live and Die in LA. The fellow who was my technical advisor had been a Secret Service agent for 20 years, and he got a counterfeiter that he busted to come out and be paroled to his custody, and this guy taught us, and in fact he made the money. And the money was so damn good, I confess I passed some of it. I would go into a bar. No, I mean, I'm not proud, I'm telling you the truth. This is a place that respects the truth. We know that. I'm not in Hollywood now, or Kansas anymore. So, this guy made counterfeit 20s. There was it's all changed now because there were billions of dollars of counterfeit money out there. So the American currency has now been changed. It's sort of laser printed, where you can see clearly through it, and if you can't, it's a fake. But then, this guy knew the exact paper that you had to use. The paper, am I keeping you up, sir? You okay? I can talk I can talk a little quieter. The paper is called rag. And I don't know if you've ever seen a Hallmark greeting card, and there used to be a little snip of paper in it. That was the kind of paper that money was printed on. It was, I forget the number, but it was like a number 17 rag. And so you had to have the exact paper. And this guy, we printed money as good as the U.S. Treasury prints money. But we did a lot of it on one side only. And then we did a lot of it on the other side only. And then we did some of it on two sides. So a lot of the people who worked on the film took some samples home. And there was one fella, he was a special effects man on the film. And he took some of the one-sided money home, and he put it up on his dresser, and his teenage son came along with his friend, and they stole some of these bills that were printed on one side. And they took them down to a supermarket and ordered some Cokes and a bunch of other stuff. And the cashier looked at the money and said, "Oh, just a moment, sir." They were 15 years old, whatever. And within 5 minutes, the Secret Service was down there questioning these guys. And where'd you get this? My dad. What was your dad doing with it? I don't know. What does your dad do? He works on movies. What movies? Blah, blah, blah. Boom. Take us to your dad. Went to his dad. They grilled this fellow. Didn't believe him. So they said to him, "Where'd you get this money?" And he named the prop man, who was a great friend of mine. Wonderful prop man. He did 6 or 7 films with me. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, the Secret Service banged on his door. And boom, Secret Service, U.S. Secret Service, boom, right through the door. Where'd you get this money? We're making a movie. Well, what movie? What is it? Boom. Who made the movie? He gave me up. He had to. So he called me at about 4 o'clock in the morning. He told me what had happened. And so I immediately called my contact in the Secret Service. And I said, "What am I going to do? Because they're going to call me." He said, "You're going to get a call from the United States Attorney. He's a good fella. His name is Robert Bonner, Bob Bonner. He's a career Justice Department guy, and he was the U.S. Attorney for California. And he said, when he calls you, he'll be very polite, and he'll ask you to come down for questioning, and he'll try and stick something on you, but it'll be very, very quiet." And he said, "Just ask him, when he says, 'Would you mind coming down, answer a few questions,' just say, 'Not at all, sir, as long as you go out and get a warrant. Go out and get a warrant, and you can talk to me.'" So that's what happened. Mr. Bonner called me. Very polite. "Mr. Friedkin, yes, do you mind coming down?" I said, "Well, Mr. Bonner, I'd love to come down to Secret Service headquarters, but I think you've got to get a warrant first." And he said, "Oh, no, you're not going to play that game, are you?" And I said, "I'm not playing the game. I'll tell you anything you want to know. Get a warrant." I never heard from them again because it was so patently absurd. It was obviously a movie. But I did take some of the real money. I'd go into a bar, put a 20 on the bar, buy a drink for everybody that was around there, leave a $2 tip. Or I'd get a shoe shine, give the guy a 20. Why not? I mean, this money was as good as what the government did. That's it.
We're going to have to leave because the next movie is coming in. Tell us quickly what you're doing.
Where are we going to go?
Well, we go somewhere else altogether if you fancy.
Are we all leaving?
I'm afraid we do that.
Oh, okay. Where are we going? What's a good restaurant? What? Where?
Where are you staying?
Cobblestone? He's not jiving me, is he? The Winding Stair? Chapter 1. Yeah, that was mentioned. What's the other one? Shanahan's? Is that anything? You just shook your head, sir, no? Where would I get a decent meal tonight?
Where are you staying?
We're staying at the Clarence.
Clarence, that's Bono's hotel.
The Winding Stair.
The Winding Stair, like you said. I think we just canceled our reservation. The driver said it sucked. But what does he know? He's just a native. Is the Winding Stair okay? Because I want a decent Irish meal. Yeah, I don't want to go to some French food. Yes, ma'am? The Trocadero? It sounds
They
like...
haven't changed the menu since December.
Yeah, they changed the menu. How many think the Winding Stair? Okay. How many think the Burger King? Listen, I'm very happy. Say what?
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Punchline you were looking for.
I don't think I can eat another Kentucky. By the way, one little secret for you. We didn't use Kentucky Fried Chicken. Gina Gershon, who played this part, preferred a brand called Church's. So I don't know if you have it over here, it's called Church's. And we call it in the film K-Fry-C, and they are called KFC. Is that over here, that Kentucky Fried Chicken? Yeah, make sure you tell them we didn't use that stuff. They'll sue my ass, I'll leave it like this. Thank you, Donald. Thank you, ladies.